man I spoke to. It's been almost 5 years since our last interview. And he was a deputy governor at the Bank of Ghana at the time. But today, he's the man spearheading the economic section and the positioning of the opposition NDC on Ghana's economy. I'm sure by now you know what I'm talking about. Dr. Johnson P. Esiama.
Hello.
Doc, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I hope you are doing well.
I'm doing very well.
You do not look like somebody who's been in opposition and suffering.
Well, there's something they call the grace of God.
Oh, I see.
He says he will lay a table for you in the presence of your enemies. So regardless, we are thriving. We are thriving.
You are not a politician.
Yes.
Your entire life, it's been central bank, be it in Ghana, at YFM, or at different levels.
Correct.
At what point did you make the decision that you have to lead communication on the economy for the NDC?
So, Raymond, you know, there comes a time in the life of man when you have to stand. Okay. You have to stand for society. And it's not just about yourself. I see a lot of young people. I look after many of them. You know, I'm in touch now that I'm home with them, and I can understand what they are going through.
Okay.
When I look at what's ahead, I'm scared. It's scary. I can see lots of structural issues that we are not addressing.
Oh, really?
Yes, and I'm happy to tell you about those. And so, being home and being idle, I was invited to work with the lab. You know, the lab is the think tank of the NDC, to work with them. And I said, yes, why not? I can assist for them to shape their policies. And you see, the good thing is, you don't wait until politicians get into government with all manner of manifesto promises, and then now it becomes a problem to coordinate with it. So I said, well, that's good. It's an opportunity to help them shape it well, so there can be some convergence between the politicians and the technocrat.
Okay.
That way, when they get to government, there will be less of divergence, so we can make progress. And so that was what get me to them. There's been all kinds of debates, you know, sometimes even whilst in church, we are arguing.
I see.
Oh yes, some of the debates were really, really interesting, particularly when it came to what the central bank can do and do more, you know. But at the end of the day, there was convergence. We all understood to what extent the central bank can go to support job creation, growth, long-term development, and what fiscal policy can do, etc. And I'm happy I've been able to bring, you know, such discussions to bear. It helps the future. At least I'm sure and I'm certain that if the NDC is voted back into power, the policies they put together are near optimality. We don't wait until, you know, people get into government and then through their actions, they do all manner of things which you and I will be at the receiving end for. And so that is what I've done.
Okay, but you are not ideologically a social democrat or a socialist at the core, are you?
So I don't restrict myself to ideology.
Really?
What I'm interested in is the welfare of the young people I'm looking after.
Okay.
Every month, you have no idea how many young people I send money to. Young girls that I'm looking after.
Okay.
5 years, some of them haven't got a job because they are not connected.
Oh, really?
I'm telling you. And I'm thinking of how we can make it better. How can we give a better circumstance to these young people? And so, you know, the whole thing about Ghana's politics, I'm really not interested in that. What I'm interested in is giving our resource endowments how we can deliver better outcomes. Because all that I see is a lot of, you know, just signaling, little efficiency here and there, propaganda, this. Please, please, we've got to do better. We've got to move on.
I'm excited people like you are in the sector because, I mean, sometimes it gets tiring hearing from politicians every day. Now, talk about people like you. In the manifesto, former President Mahama stated that The NDC will launch a forensic audit into the NPP's collapse of indigenous Ghanaian banks and financial institutions at a supposed cost of the 25 billion. That's the first thing he said. And said, and restore the licenses of wrongfully collapsed financial institutions and create employment opportunities for persons who lost their jobs as part of a broader strategy to increase indigenous participation in the sector.
Correct.
What really does this mean?
Talking about forensic audits, I have been subjected to all manner of things since I left office. I've been put through all manner of things.
How do you mean?
Oh, there was a police report on the house I own.
Oh, really?
Oh, there was all kinds of things. I was subjected to all manner of audits.
Because you were a deputy governor?
Oh, because they had suspicions. And without asking, about me to explain things to them, they subjected me to all manner of things. We can have a whole discussion on that.
I mean, investigations.
And so, yes.
Really?
They took me to court. For 7 years now I'm in court.
Really?
Yes. I don't know who takes pleasure in these things. So for me, if somebody talks about auditing the work of public servants, it's normal. Is that okay? It's fine. Former president may want to look into things, and it's important he does so. He can look into the conduct of Bank of Ghana itself, how they got to the decision of declaring certain banks insolvent. You understand? What factors went into that?
But
because
is that not pretty much known to everybody?
No, it's not known.
It's not?
No, it's not known. There are
insolvency is based on a criteria.
Yes.
And those are specific data-oriented criteria.
No, not at all. Technically, and I'm not talking about those specific examples. I'm saying certain reassessments were made for some of them based upon which the decision was reached, and actions taken. And so it's okay to want to look at how thorough those were, and then the grounds upon which they were taken. It's good to look at the process of the official administrator, for example, how the receivership came into being. And you remember at 930, it was President John Mahama who passed that law.
2016.
Exactly. So he has watched how the law has been applied. Now, the bigger part is that, Raymond, one fundamental problem we have as a country is that the economy is dominated by foreigners.
I see.
Now, that in itself is not a bad thing. It's okay to have foreigners in your economy. But when they dominate, it has implications for your local currency.
That's interesting.
And that's the first fundamental reason. If we don't change that, the city will continue to depreciate.
We'll talk about the city.
So I'm coming. So it's within that context that President Mahama is saying, look, I need to bring closure to all that has happened. Why? Because foreign ownership in the banking industry, local ownership in the banking industry has gone down significantly.
Yes.
In 2023, out of the total profits that were made in the banking sector, 90% accrue to foreign ownerships. 90%. And that has implications for your city. So in some, out of the three sectors of the economy, we have three sectors. The agri, the industry services.
Yeah.
Two of them, the last two, industry and services, totally dominated by foreign ownership.
Oh, I see.
Yes. And so these are the things that the former president wants to reset. So not only the financial sector, not only the banking industry, but those two. If you can reset those two, you are freeing pressure on the city.
Okay, so
so that is how come he says, look, we need to put back all that has happened. People are in court, we know that. But then the law provides for arbitration. You understand? So that's a window to have a real look into the issues. If the arbitration center comes out with recommendations that says, no, Bank A, probably something went wrong, so maybe give them the opportunity to go back into the industry, give them a new license. That will also be a court decision. And then it can be implemented.
I'm interested in this question. Some have asked, so which specific banks do we think that were collapsed wrongfully and we want to restore their licenses?
So again, that will be subject to what the arbitration panel comes up with. You know, in Act 930, Section 141, 142, it provides that context. So let the arbitration panel do their work. They'll look into various dimensions. At least I know that one of the banks was important systemically. You understand? And in every country, when banking crisis happens, one of the first determinants is which of them is systemically important. Those ones are given forbearance. Why? Because if you don't do that, it will impose a huge cost on your fiscal.
Okay.
And so we have to look into it whether these considerations went into the decisions. And remember, when it comes to the local banks, some of them were saved. Some were not saved. What kind of criteria was used? You know, it's just proper we get to understand what it is and take the opportunity to revise the law if we have to. And all this is important to prevent a recurrence in the future.
Except that it is Dr. Siama we are speaking to.
Well,
it was during your time that
correct.
we saw an asset quality review done,
That's true.
which determined the position of some of these banks.
That is true.
So it should have and would have been clear to everybody, including your very self, that some of these banks were in a terrible situation.
Raymond, so you want to ask, what were we doing?
Okay.
Remember 2015, somewhere August, that was where the assets quality review exercise began. You remember that? Now, by December 2015, ESLA was passed, right? And so after ESLA was passed, it meant that some of them were now moving towards the green.
Okay.
I mean, your purpose is not to collapse banks. Your purpose is to, you know, support the banking sector. And so the decision was made to extend the cutoff date for the assets quality review and give those banks affected. The reports are there. Some of them were bringing in some additional capital. Some of them were perfecting their collaterals. Some of them, you know, were doing other things that will impact on their conditions.
And others were engaged in plain stealing too.
That's another issue.
Okay,
you would always have exceptional issues, but those are marginal issues. Don't confuse them with the main. And so the cutoff date was shifted to, I think, June.
Okay.
Come June, it was shifted again. Why? Because Act 930 was not ready at the time. And don't forget, there was an earlier banking act, which, if we had left to still be there, they could have closed down some of the private banks.
That's true.
Because that old act made it extremely difficult. And you know, Act 930 was passed only in September 2016. You understand? After the act is passed, you have to, you know, engage with industry, pick up certain nuances, go back to do an LI in Parliament. That takes 21 days. You have to do some sensitization before you activate. So it was clear in our mind that by April 2017, we would have to move on those banks. By then, we would have determined those that really couldn't cope. And then the decision is made as to which one goes which way. But I can tell you one factor that was in our mind was that if any of those struggling banks was important systemically, you understand, it has a technical meaning. If a bank is important systemically, it means that that bank, for example, has placements from a whole lot of, you know, big institutions in the country. And you know, the moment that bank collapses without government intervention, other related institutions could collapse. You understand? So that was one determination, that if any of them was important to the system, then something needed to be done. So those considerations would have made input to the approach we would have taken. And what I'm telling you is that at the end of the day, yes, some of them would have gone down probably, but the cost of doing the whole thing would have been lesser. And on top of my head, I don't think it wowould have costed anything more than 3-4 billion.
Not 25 billion.
No, nowhere close. Not even a quarter of that.
How are you guaranteed that that was not going to be the cost of resolving banks?
Because if I resolve the systemically important one well, and it was easy to do so, because they had receivables with government. So tell the government to give them a piece of paper that says we commit to pay this to you in the next 2 years. At the time, government bonds were credible. Give them just a piece of paper. They will go to the bigger banks and say, look, government has committed to give me 500 million, but we need liquidity so badly. So give us 400 million, wait for 2 years and go and collect 500 million. That would be a profit of 100 million.
It would have met the criteria.
Exactly. So then you go to 2-3 banks, they would have raised that money to stabilize that bank, just because that bank is systemically important. Now you go the extra mile now and say, look, certain things have gone wrong in your bank. There appears to be some criminal activity. We are now going to look into that. So that way you separate the bank from the individuals. You can still prosecute people, criminal prosecutions, you can do all that. And yet the bank is working. You understand? Because as at that time, we never heard that anybody went to any of them and didn't get his money. So we knew there was a problem. Customers didn't know there was. You understand? Really? So there was still adequate time. And what I'm saying is that we would have been surgical. You understand it? If you are surgical, not a blanket approach. When you do it a blanket approach, you incur 25 billion. I didn't ask you to go and incur 25 billion. I could have done that with 3-4 billion. You know, and mind you...
And you don't think this is causing financial loss to the state?
Well, it's for the courts or someone to determine. But I think that given what has happened, I mean, I have gone through all sorts of things. And I've come to accept that, look, public office means going under investigations. So everybody should subject himself. You know, we should investigate it. That's the only way we can put the issue back to rest. Especially when some people feel that others were favored.
Okay.
You know, then you want to bring proper closure. You know, that way we can move ahead. And the bigger task is how to promote local ownership, indigenization, you know, in various sectors, not just the banking sector, but as I said, across those 2 sectors where foreign ownership is dominating. It's a lot of work to be done, but it's all captured under the major theme of resetting, you know, Ghana.
That's an interesting perspective. You keep saying that there are banks that, if you collapse, it poses systemic risk.
Yes.
Which banks were you referencing?
Because these things are in court, I don't want to mention specific banks.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, because that's
my enemies are watching, so please, I've got to be careful. I have lots of enemies. I don't know what they benefit from. Oh yes, I don't know what. Somebody's watching me now.
But you're not even the main governor.
Oh yes, somebody's watching me. I don't want to mention his name, but I don't know. Ask him what he's gaining from harassing me.
Harassing you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I wish I could
as in a legitimate.
It's so bad. It's so bad. I just want to tell that fellow, look, we went to school to acquire skill, and the purpose is to solve society's problems. That's what it is. It's not about your ego. You know, my children's children, the young people I see, their future. That is what it's about. It's not about your ego. So stop harassing me. Stop personalizing issues. I know he's watching me.
But you have not been really speaking anyway, so why would anybody be interested in harassing you?
Well, you know, you have not been the last interview we had, it was among the issues that brought me problems.
Oh, really?
They were not happy at all.
I didn't intend causing you problems anyway.
Oh, no, not that. I did one other one.
Okay.
And then I'm sure the individual got angry, wanted to teach me a lesson. I went through all sorts of things.
I was asking because you brought in former President Mahama's name. Dr. Bawumia maintains he doesn't really understand the banking center reforms. That's why he's proposing that he would actually do this review and make sure that if there is a need to restore some of the licenses to the people.
So the person who crafted the law, you know, the former president who assented to this law, 14th of September, you can check. And to assent before a law is assented, you know, Bank of Ghana took it to cabinet.
Yeah.
The president chairs cabinet. They presented everything, went through it, and then it was sent to parliament. After it was discussed in parliament and approved, and by the way, I led the team of staff to parliament to approve this that day. So after it was approved in parliament, it was taken back to the former president. He assented, his signature. Now, inside the law, there's a provision, as I said, section 141 and 142, which shows how the issue of collapsed banks should be handled if any of the shareholders, you know, become aggrieved. And so when President John Mahama says, I will look again into the issue of collapsed banks, you must understand that he knows exactly what he's talking about. He's not saying that I'm going to be sharing banking license to anybody like Toffee. He used the word those who are wrongfully.
Yeah.
And that's the operation word, wrongfully. So that means there will be a determination of whether truly they were wrongfully treated. If they are not, why not? You see, so in line with the provision in this act, they could go to the arbitration center. The issue is reviewed by an arbitration panel, and if there's the basis that the individuals should be given a new license, why not? It will all be subject to what the arbitration panel says. It's not subject to what the president at the time will say. So the point I'm making is that former President Mahama is the one who did this. He's more than aware of the provisions here. What we should have done was to ask him, the House, if he says, I will restore the licenses of those who were wrongly, whatever. It's for the media to ask, former president, what exactly do you mean by that? How would you do it?
Yeah.
And then he would have explained that there is a provision in this law for what I want to do. Everything will be done in line with the law. You understand? There will be no discretionary acts. There will be no political solutions. Everything will be handled under the arbitration center. That aside, you could have your criminal investigations or whatever. You could do that. But the arbitration center will come up with a verdict. And if the center says, give the individual a new license, so be it. If they say, no, restore. Remember, some of the liquidations are not even over.
Okay, yeah.
So if the liquidation is not ended, the courts can make any determination.
I get your point.
And even where there's a court decision on some of them, you know about the law, the courts. It operates in different levels. So if a high court says A, you can always go to an appeals court to quash it.
That's the Supreme Court, yeah.
Even the Supreme Court level, they can still review their own earlier decisions. Yeah. So the point we are saying is that it's about the rights of individuals and businesses. If you feel you were wrongfully treated, there's a provision in the law for you to seek reliefs. So we'll subject you to that provision. If the panel comes out and says, we think this is the way to bring closure, give him a new license, or probably because of this, that, this one can go back. I mean, that is subject to what the panel says. We cannot sit here and say, no, don't listen to anybody. Whereas there were genuine concerns. You see, there were genuine issues. We cannot just close our eyes over them. So I think it's important we reopen the pages if there's opportunity to do so.
I get your point. Now, another controversy, because the Vice President has caused to repeat it more recently. He says these banks were not collapsed. They were merged. Now, for example, I know that in the case of Heritage Bank, the BOG issued a statement and said they have revoked their license and issued an order for a purchase and assumption agreement to be instituted. Is that purchase and assumption agreement different from a measure? And can we still use the word collapse?
So you notice I don't use the word collapsed. I don't use the word collapse. I use the word resolved, because there are different
that might be
ways,
the technical term.
Yes, there are different ways to resolve a bank that is having problems. You could merge it with a stronger bank. You could shut it down completely. You can go straight to liquidation, or you can bring in an official administrator. Okay, so different levels. And I think for the banks, there were different treatments. What they didn't do is they didn't go, I think for some of them, they went straight into liquidation. But the point is, if the liquidation is not complete, it's not ended, then the issue hasn't ended.
Okay.
And so it can always be reviewed. It's part of their human rights. Let them look into it again. If you find that there were any fundamental flaws in the decisions that were taken, I mean, just resolve
it. Can be reviewed and
reviewed if it's done. But make sure you do everything in line with the law, because this is what governs the industry.
Since we are on banking and the sector and the central bank, the NDC manifesto also mentioned that the NDC will restructure the Bank of Ghana to strengthen its independence and operational efficiency to deliver its price and financial stability mandate. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, it's important. You see, like they say, the fish gets rotten from the head,
Yeah.
right? First of all, you know, if you take the Bank of Ghana Act, it's 2002. In 2016, we tried to update it, you know, with Act 918. But there were still issues we did not capture. And there are new developments, you know, things about artificial intelligence, data analytics, the cryptocurrency issues that are coming up now. They are not adequately captured, you know, within those regulatory laws. And then not to talk about the central bank independence issue. And then also the way and manner in which Bank of Ghana manages itself within this whole fiscal dominance thing that has happened. Okay. It's a major issue we can't just brush away. And so, first of all, our plan is to pass an entirely new Bank of Ghana law. Oh, really? New law, yes. The IMF program is asking for certain aspects to be amended. Reviewed, yeah. We don't think that is enough. There still are lots of issues we need to, you know, capture. And so there has to be a totally new Bank of Ghana law. This is how to move forward. You don't pick it pieces and, you know, here and there. And then at the same time, cater for the new developments that are coming up.
This so-called new Bank of Ghana Act that you intend to put in place, what is the overarching aim?
So it would not be just the Bank of Ghana Act. Okay. We also would want to pass a new Foreign Exchange Act. What is in place now is 2006. And even though they've been passing some notices here and there, you know, those notices are not as powerful as the law. So we need a totally new act. We need to reorganize the entire framework for managing our foreign exchange and the CD. And so it will go hand in hand with all of them. The issue about fintechs, you've heard about fintechs, remittances, you know, cryptocurrency. There's a lot we know that is going on. And there are too many loopholes.
But the Bank of Ghana currently has a directive on fintech.
Yes.
Why is that requiring a review of the parent law to make sure that...
So directives are not as strong as law.
Acts of Parliament. Okay.
And then you also want to be sure that you capture everything necessary, as I'm saying. So just do a new law, you know, to recapture these. There has to be some internal reforms within Bank of Ghana itself in many areas. More or less, we modernize the central bank. The central bank should not be an island on its own. It's not a kingdom on its own. And so you find that they are missing out on a number of things. You know, the markets are always ahead of them. For example,
but that's really all over the world. That's how regulators always do catch up.
Yes, so that's why you review your act. You pass new acts to catch up with the new developments. And then when it comes to transparency, we need to strengthen that. Because, look, take it or leave it. This fiscal dominance thing that happened is really dented, you know, issues when it comes to credibility of the central bank, etc. So, for example, we want to introduce greater levels of transparency, particularly into monetary policy. You know, up to today, lots of people don't know what happens there. MPC, blah, blah, blah. People really don't bother. They don't even care. The other day, a friend asked me, do you think Ghanaians really bother what people are doing? You know? So it raises credibility issues. And so one of the things we discussed at committee level is that when we come in, the MPC submissions, you know, the members make submissions. Yeah. Number one, those submissions will be published.
I see.
Yes. So that the media can understand what individuals considered.
Who said what?
Who said what, based on what. And then number two, you can assess whether the decision was suitable or not. Okay. It strengthens credibility in the actions that were taken.
That's a more transparent process.
Exactly, that's what we need.
But to what end?
So, to what end, like I'm saying, you want to be able to draw nearer economic agents. Okay. You want to be able to draw nearer to the markets. You want to climb down from that ivory tower. You understand? Interact more informally with the markets and individuals. Because you pick a lot of information as you do so. Because the environment is evolving by the day. Technology, what have you, You know, it's opening up certain spaces that were not there before.
Should the central bank still be in charge of both prudential regulation and market conduct regulation?
So we have that also in the manifesto. We plan to move away from the sectoral, model of banking supervision to what we call the twin peak, approach. South Africa has just completed
That's
that.
True.
I was telling a friend that if we had such a scheme, today, issues like NAM1 would not have happened. So, those regulatory gaps that tend to, offer spaces for these things. Once you move on to the twin peak approach, you take care of that.
But the twin peak is not without difficulties, though.
That is true. Everything has its own drawbacks.
Yes.
So it will not be a sudden movement. Why? Okay. Because several laws have to be moved, changed here and there. So it could take up to, in my estimation, about 4 or 5 years. South Africa spent about 5 years to complete it. So, but what's important is that you begin. And so operationally, there should be some work operationally to integrate the work of the market conduct function that Bank of Ghana is playing, integrate it together with the same function that Securities and Exchange Commission is playing, the same thing. Exactly.
There may be the Pensions Regulatory Authority.
Exactly. Yeah. So that gradually you are introducing these reforms. So hopefully by the next 4 years, we have a twin peak approach, emphasis on prudential regulation, as you said, and greater efficiency.
The NDC also said it will launch a forensic audit into the illegal printing of money by the Bank of Ghana to finance the corrupt Akufo-Addo government, which caused hyperinflation and pushed over 850,000 Ghanaians into poverty in the year 2022. The question that, and in all fairness, the Bank of Ghana issued a statement and said, without that, this country could have ground to a halt.
It's not their mandate. Their mandate
to save the country?
No, it's not their mandate. The mandate is price stability. If you are governor, you are not a thing god. You are not in charge of this country. Your mandate.
But critical intervention like that?
Listen.
They say government workers have been paid.
No. So you talk to Parliament.
Okay.
Parliament gave you, your mandate. If you have any difficulty, go to Parliament. If you are finding it difficult to interpret the law, you understand what constitutes emergency, blah, 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 go and ask Parliament. Did they do that?
I did not know about that.
Yes. So you act within your mandate. You assert your independence. Even if you notice that the law doesn't offer enough, anchors. You understand? Who gave you the law? It's Parliament. Did they approach Parliament for advice on what to do? Or they only listened to the Minister of Finance? Raymond, that was a disaster.
But
that was a disaster.
Really?
Yes. That was a disaster. Because time was of essence. If certain decisions were taken earlier, our debt would not have transited to unsustainable, levels. And I'm telling you, there wouldn't have been haircuts. I'm telling you, if there were no haircuts, we would have been in the international capital markets by now. And I'm telling you that the CD would not have depreciated to the levels you are seeing now.
But you are blaming the Bank of Ghana.
Yes, I'm blaming them. That was a disastrous act. If you have a mandate from Parliament, you understand, you are not more powerful than Parliament. You understand? If you have a difficulty in your function at Joy FM, what do? You report to senior management.
Bosses,
Why don't you do that? And you say, oh, I love Joy FM so much that I was trying to rescue Joy FM. That's not your job. That's not your job. It was wrong. Even if the law did not offer enough guidance, what I'm saying is that when we amended the Act in 2016, that is Act 918, we inserted something on parliamentary oversight.
Okay.
Because we observed that the central bank governor is at the same time the chairman of the board.
Yeah.
So certain decisions, you can't leave it to him alone.
There isn't any other superior authority.
Yeah. So that was why, if you notice, under 918, which we did in 2016, we emphasized on parliamentary oversight. The idea then was that there should be certain, instances where you need to judge with Parliament. They have the mandate to protect this country. The central bank governor does not have that mandate. Your mandate is as provided in your law. So why were they taking decisions, leaving out Parliament? I don't understand.
Do you back the claim that per that conduct, those at the helm of affairs should leave office?
Leaving office, what you mean currently?
Yes.
Oh, but they are almost at the end of their tenure.
Oh, okay. You don't think that they should resign?
But I think these things should be investigated properly.
Okay.
You know, because see, when these things happen, as a nation, you want to prevent a recurrence. And where you notice that people did things deliberately, you understand it? Because look, people have lost their lives.
That's true.
This is not a joke. This is a serious matter. You know, you want to investigate it. You want to bring closure to it. You want to see the lessons you have learned so it never occurs again. And so it's fine, but I'm not necessarily, the other sentences, the other words in that sentence you wrote, I'm only speaking to the printing money.
Yes, yes. In fact, the word we used was the illegal printing of money.
No, leave those ones to the politicians.
okay, yes.
I must emphasize that my concern is about
the printing of the money.
Yes.
All right,
yes.
okay.
Which was needless. Okay. It was needless. Yes.
Now, my last question on the central bank, and because you've been there, so I have to take the opportunity to ask you all those questions.
Ask me any question.
Now, the manifesto also says that they'll investigate the MPP's opaque gold for oil initiative.
Yes.
And review the gold purchase program of the Bank of Ghana.
Yes.
Recently, at his Meet the Press, Vice President said that saved this economy. We're almost at the brink of Sri Lanka, but for this gold purchase program. He believes that would also anchor the city going into the future. So, do you agree? You are both economists.
I disagree totally.
Really?
With due respect to His Excellency, the Vice President. And I'm not doing politics here. You know, I'm talking economics. So, you see, anything you do is about how efficient you do it. You understand? Ask them. Bank of Ghana finances that go for oil thing. Now, after the suppliers, sell, ask them where the money goes. There are serious issues about that scheme currently.
Really? It's not going back to the...
It's not going back to Bank of Ghana. It's a big headache for Bank of Ghana as I speak to you right now. There are big issues behind it. The extractive industry people...
So we have gold.
No, listen.
Okay.
The extractive industry people are even petitioning Parliament, to conduct, an inquiry into the whole thing.
Really?
Exactly. So for me, let's not prioritize that.
There
are other ways to manage the city efficiently. Do that, and if you have to do gold for oil, you can do it more efficiently. If we have to do it, for example, number one, central bank will not be involved.
Really?
Yeah. Central bank must not be involved. Get a vehicle, a private sector vehicle, to administer that. Get a policy document on it. Have you seen a policy document on it before?
No, they shared some slides some time ago. I've not seen one. Maybe they have.
Oh, no.
But they shared some slides. So we kept on asking for further details on that anyway.
So you see, that's why the NDC said opaque. Because if you don't throw light on things, what would people say? They'll say it's not transparent.
Now, can that be separated from the gold purchase program? Do you also think that's a poor policy?
So, first of all, in the IMF document, they stated that it should be phased out.
Yes,
so
but the PS government does not agree with them.
So, and that's a mistake they are making. You see, the gold purchase program and all the hula baloo about it, all you are trying to do is you want to increase your reserves.
Yeah.
And remember, in terms of seniority, dollar reserves are far better than gold reserves.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Because if you need to do certain government payments, blah, blah, you don't have enough dollars in your account as a country, what do? You have to sell your gold. Selling gold is not something you do within minutes. Okay, so in terms of liquidity, dollar reserves, euro reserves are preferred. Now, it is true that the gold reserves for a long time were low. So you can augment it, that is fine. But what they are doing now, one of the problems, and which is a line when you look into Bank of Ghana's financial statements, there's something they have there called exchange losses. It's contributing to the losses they are making. So there's no efficiency. So whereas they said we are increasing gold reserves or whatever, how about the cost in terms of liquidity management that they are incurring? So our point is that do things efficiently. Gold has a lot of high demand. You can export it and sell. Who says you can't sell your gold? You know, but first of all, embrace fiscal consolidation, you know, make sure macroeconomic stability becomes entrenched, you know, accelerate your exports, you know, the value addition to your top 3 exports. That way you earn dollars. You understand? That also raises your level of reserves.
Would that be better than anchoring your currency with gold reserves?
Far better. Remember, no matter the quantum
because
of your...
Dr. Bamia believes this is the panacea to our currency problem.
Policies must be sustainable. You understand? These days we talk about sustainability. You should be concerned about generations to come. And so gold is a finite product. It will get finished. You understand?
I get you.
So you want to exploit all the country's gold reserves and say, I've stabilized the city, you know, this year or tomorrow. How about your children's time? Your children's children, if they also have to do the same thing, where's the goal for them to do it? So it fails the sustainability test.
Okay.
And I'm saying that the efficiency test is also facing, why? Because it's causing problems for the central bank. If you have to do it, reorganize the whole machinery. Is that okay? Look at how efficient you can deliver this. And, you know, prioritize your actions, because you can accelerate exports on a number of levels. You can block out some of the leakages. When you do all that, you are preserving the level of reserves Bank of Ghana has to be able to intervene in the market on a daily basis. That way you can control the exchange rate, you know.
Now, let me get this clarity from you too. Some are asking, now the CD we are told is around 16 CD. That's very high.
Yes.
Because of the likelihood that we will not be getting support for this time of the year. That's the cocoa syndicated law.
Yes.
Or not getting the same amount of money we had hoped to get in times past. It is clearly going to indicate to the rest of us that the CD stability will be problematic going into the future.
Very much so. And again, that's why I agree with the former president that on the resetting agenda, one of the first things he wants to do is to re-engage the IMF. You know, in fact, any government that takes over, we need to renegotiate the fund program.
How?
You know, out of the $3 billion they committed to, by the end of this year, would have spent close to $2 billion.
That's true.
Now, when you look at the projected payments that are waiting for us between now and maybe 2028, 27 or 28, you are talking of around $6 billion. Now, what is the current, gross international reserves level of Bank of Ghana?
Oh, okay.
It's around $6 billion.
Yeah.
So it tells you that, you know, even if you get the additional $1 billion from the IMF,
it won't be now.
Chances are that there's a tsunami waiting to, hit the CD into the future. So straight away from next year, something needs to be done. If we have to re-engage the IMF, if we have to consider, convince them to give us some additional resources, even if they ask us to extend the program by 1 year, it's good. It gives a lot of confidence to the international capital markets. We're able to get some additional resources. And once you get that, the World Bank also follows up. In sum, what I'm saying is, the future doesn't look as bright as the politicians are making us to believe. We need to take some, I don't want to use the word bold because somebody's using it.
Yes, but have we not turned the corner?
We haven't.
No, because...
You haven't started paying any of your debts. You restructured them. You haven't cancelled them. And so we'll start paying them next year.
But inflation is declining, as we know it to be.
Inflation?
Is declining. it used to be getting to the end of 2013 or so, somewhere around, beginning of 2013.
Yes.
It was somewhere inching, or is it end or beginning? 54. We've had 54 before. 54 inflationary rate in this republic, not too long ago. And now we are somewhere around 20.3 or so. It should make sense that we all see the change.
So first of all, anytime the CD is depreciating, it impacts on inflation. It impacts on almost everything. Yeah. So today I'm told it's around 16. If it moves further, you would see that the next reading, inflation will start going up.
Yeah.
Anytime there's an increment, and once the exchange rate is adjusting, it means that the price of fuel, is also going up. utility adjustments following suit, food prices might also keep going again. So we are nowhere out of the woods. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, from next year going, it's really going to be the test case. And for me, I'll feel safer with someone who says, look, I will go back to the IMF. I will make a case for another look. I'll look for additional resources. I will make changes across the economy, fundamental changes that will free up the city, that will accelerate growth. And above all, I will address some of the inequities. You look at what they talk about in terms of women's empowerment, for example. Mm-hmm. We debated that at length. And I think those are the ways to reset the country going forward.
But Doc, the NDC is also promising, including freebies. Why are you going to, you are telling me we are having a difficulty raising the needed funds for other things. And yet we have a so-called 10 billion big push. We also have other very big ticket stuff that's going to demand a lot of money. Why will we get the fiscal space to do all of that?
No, most of those would not be put on the fiscal.
Really?
Yes. The 10 billion big push, for example. No. When they did the Terminal 3 during our time, it wasn't put on the fiscal.
Okay, yes.
It wasn't.
Self-financing.
The project in Tema Harbour, it wasn't put on the fiscal. And so most of those infrastructure expenditures are going to be, self-financing. They will not be on the fiscal at all. For me, one other thing that gives me confidence is a commitment to organize, the consultative forum, within 120 days, specifically on fiscal consolidation.
The accusation is that if you don't know what you are coming to do.
Not true.
If you are not sure in your
not
mind,
true.
you can't rule this country.
No.
We have moved beyond the times where you are now trying options. No. That we need to give you ideas, sit on the table.
No, they are not asking for ideas.
Go into a Sainty because we did Sainty 20, 40, 15. Then we came out with homegrown policies.
Which fed into the 2015 program of the IMF.
Yes, but we are here.
Yes.
We are in 2024, barely 10 years later. We have an IMF program. We have a difficulty on our hands.
No. So if you have one single problem that continues to confront you all your life, it comes a time when he says, look, we need to sit down over this. This is how I plan.
But we sat down barely a decade ago over a similar thing.
Other new things have come in. Okay. So you say, look, let's look at this together. I'm going to be implementing certain things that will impact you.
Okay.
But I need to let you know that this is what is going to happen. It's a national pain that we have, to go through. It prepares you ahead. And who knows? You yourself, you could even come and say, as a matter of fact, I commit to do more than you even plan to do.
Okay.
So consultative, approaches to policy making, it helps to enhance the efficiency of your policy. It makes it more effective. And it's something we should embrace. One reference point I have those days was in the early 80s when Rawlings was in charge. Remember when he said, look, we need to put ourselves, together and attack the problems. Did you remember, maybe you were very young at the time, students committed to go and carry cocoa voluntarily. And did it mean that Rawlings didn't know what to do? But when you involve the people, that is leadership. It makes it easier for you to achieve results. And as a country, we are suffering together. We shouldn't leave everything to just some few people when they come into power. Let them interact with us. We will even, commit to more. And together we move as a country.
What can we do to bring inflation to single digits?
To bring inflation to single digits, a number of things. My advice was, number one, food price inflation. Given our resource endowments when it comes to agriculture, there's no reason why we should be having food price inflation. So different government agencies have to come together, including even the Bank of Ghana.
Okay.
How do we increase food supply? How do we address the problem of food prices? If you look through the manifesto in the agri part, you will see a number of things there.
Programs
we can have another discussion on those. If you're able to tackle food price inflation, if you're able to stabilize the exchange rate, inflation will drop.
How about exchange rate?
Yes.
What specifically can we do to make sure that we get back to those days where the CD was exchanging for $1 at somewhere below 5 cedi?
So you know, it's not that simple to just keep a strong exchange rate. You know, it doesn't help. But you also don't want to see a lot of volatility. You know, stability helps. Now, so you're asking, what can we do to augment, you know, Bank of Ghana's, you know,
monetary policy
stock of foreign exchange? And I've explained that, look, aggressively, first of all, talk to the IMF. You know, they can quickly, you know, based on your negotiations, you can get some additional resources, augment your reserves so you can hold the front. While at that, go for an accelerated, you know, exports development program. You understand it? And at any rate, you have 3 of them available. Value addition, oil, cocoa, gold. Value addition.
The cocoa that we are struggling with syndicated loan.
Well, which shouldn't be the case. Which shouldn't be the case. I mean, it defies logic as to what is happening in that sector. But that's another discussion altogether.
My last question to you, because I'm wrapping up this conversation. If you were a consultant to a bunch of investors possible in this republic, would you ask them to invest in Ghana?
Well, it will be subject to resetting the country. If we can reset, yes, why not? But where we are currently, and based on what I am looking at, because you see, if you're a foreign investor, at the end of the day, you want to take your money out in foreign exchange. Can you are you sure you can get a sense of where the exchange rate will be in the next 5 years?
I have
as
no
we sit
idea.
currently.
It's straight. It's also clear.
You understand? So, but if we reset and some of these reforms are implemented for a year or two, CD is still around, you know, then you can project forward and say, oh, you can come and invest. If you make this amount of profit in CDs, you are sure to be able to, you know, take your thing, you know, in equivalence in USD. So I'm not saying foreign investment shouldn't come, but I'm saying from where we are now, the risks involved are quite high. We need to work on them. Once you do that, foreign investment will come back. Are you aware some of the foreign investors have actually exited Ghana?
Yeah,
I'm told some of them have moved across the border, etc. So work on those fundamentals. They will come back. They will return. Reset the economy. They will stay till the long term.
Dr. Johnson P. Esiama, I'm grateful to you for your time. We should do more of these conversations.
Fantastic.
We should take other sectors and go into it in detail.
Yes, anytime. Just give me advance information and we'll look at it. And let me emphasize that I do this for the interest of my children. I do this for the interest of many young people that I take care of. I have a stake in the development of this country. Where we are now as a country, everyone must be allowed to contribute. We should all offer, you know, ideas on how to get things done better. It's about the welfare of everyone, and that is why I'm doing this. Thank you.
Thank you so much to you out there for joining today's edition of Upfront.